everyone, Matthew LeBenz from Central Points Weather Center, and welcome to the official winter forecast for this winter of 2019-2020. Again, I'm Matthew LeBenz, leading forecaster at Central Points Weather Center, and we're going to be looking at what to expect this winter with temperatures, precipitation, and potential snowfall that we could be seeing across the United States. So to begin with, we're going to look at last year's accumulation of snow. It was a very active winter, especially across the Central Plains. For Kansas, it was the most snow we've had in about 5 years, with accumulations of 2 to 3 feet occurred. The South, again, didn't have very much snow, but the Northeast had quite a few inches of snow, especially in November, kind of calmed down. And again, the northern tier of the United States had a lot of snow. But again, it was a fairly active pattern with multiple winter storms that occurred across the Central Plains and into the Midwest. And last year, this is what I predicted. I predicted a very active storm track across the central United States and into the Northeast. And from that map, I was pretty close to being spot on. I could have improved. I could have moved it a little more north with the bulk of precipitation, but I got most of it right with the heavier snowfall occurring in Nebraska and Kansas, where they were way above average in terms of snowfall. And so that's just showing my accuracy that I know how to forecast a seasonal forecast, and also know where to put the snow accumulations. So the factors this winter, there's a couple of things we can look at. First of all, the ENSO, which was going to be neutral, is going to be an El Nino, is going to be neutral, is going to be a Modoki El Nino. We got the PDO, which is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Then we have the teleconnections, the PNA, EPO, AO, and NAO. The QBO, which is the quasi-biennial oscillation. Then the solar minimum, which is basically there's no sunspots that are reaching the Earth right now from the sun, which is a solar minimum, which means there's the sunspot spike was very low. And also the polar vortex, which is again the area of low pressure in the North Pole, will it get disrupted this year? And all these factors are going to go into this winter forecast, and it will determine how this winter goes. Will it be warm or will it be cold? So first thing to look at, this year's snowfall accumulation, it's already got off to a fast start, especially across, again, the central and southern plains, with Texas getting close to a foot of snow. Northwest Kansas already getting around a foot of snow. So it's already off to a very fast start, especially in the northwest and the northern tier of the United States. Southern tier is still kind of struggling to get some snow in there, but we'll see what happens as blocking improves and it gets colder throughout the year. That these storm systems could push south. So we'll have to see. But again, this is already out to a fast start. Like last year had a very fast start, and we saw how that turned out to be. This year is also on to a very fast start when we had that snowfall occurring in October, and we've also had some minor events in November. So this is the prediction for ENSO this year from the CPC. This is all the models combined together, and you can see the mean is trying to forecast a neutral ENSO, which means that it's not El Nino and it's not La Nina. There's neutral conditions, and then for that to occur, neutral is basically between 0.5, between negative 0.5. We're in a warm neutral phase right now. As you can see, right now we're in El Nino. I do think we do go back to neutral conditions, but there is a chance we stay El Nino, which right now, the water conditions right now in the Atlantic, or basically the Pacific, they're showing some Modoki El Nino kind of traits, with ENSO 3.4 being warmer and all the outsides being kind of cooler. So we'll see how that trends, but I do think a neutral El Nino or a neutral ENSO will probably occur. But there is a chance that a weak Modoki El Nino might also form. We'll have to keep watching that as the year progresses. And so what this is going to do is going to force a negative EPO to form. With neutral El Ninos, or neutral ENSOs, with a neutral ENSO, you get a lot of these patterns. We have a negative EPO and a positive PNA pattern. Last year we had a negative EPO, but there was also negative PNA, which why it was so active in the Central Plains last year. This year I'm expecting a more pattern of a negative EPO, positive PNA setup this year, which means there'll be probably more active weather in the eastern United States. But as you can see, a ridge builds into Alaska, and it pushes the Arctic cold air down to the United States. And this year I'm expecting a negative EPO, negative PNA pattern for some of the year, and also a negative EPO, positive PNA setup this year. And there also could be a positive EPO period where we get warmth across the United States, that's not out of the realm of possibilities. I do think it will happen once or twice this year, but the warm air will not last very long. Also, the AO and negative NAO, or the AO and NAO. So we already know what this means. I'll just go over it again. But the NAO is the North Atlantic Oscillation, and the AO is Arctic Oscillation. So so basically what this means, if you get a negative NAO, this creates blocking, which is the North Atlantic block, whatever, and the Arctic Oscillation, which means that there is that's basically the ridge setting up in Alaska, which will push the cold air south. I expect a positive NAO pattern with a negative AO pattern this year, and then also negative NAO and negative AO setup this year. Which the negative NAO and AO setup will have to deal with the cold Arctic blast, while the positive NAO and negative AO will usually correlate to colder conditions in the central United States, with the ridge probably building in the southeast. So there could be potential for a southeast ridge part of the time for next year. We'll have to see how that goes. So this is what happened. This is what's been happening in the last couple months. We've been having a lot of a negative NAO or AO this year. As you can see, it's been negative since quite some time this year. We've had negative through July through September, but it's gone up and back and forth. But I am expecting the AO to go back to being negative as we head into December, which we're in right now. But I do think we get into a bigger negative phase as we head into late December into early January, which will create cold conditions in the central United States and also across the United States. And so what's the QBO right now? It's the eastern-based QBO. And as you can see on the charts on here, we are in a solar minimum, which means that there's a very high likelihood that we get with the East QBO right here. You can see we get right here. We get an EPO, positive EPO or negative EPO right here, which means positive heights. And we also have negative heights over here, which would create a negative NAO, and then a negative AO, which would create the cold to come down into the United States. What this will do is it enhance the cold weather and also enhance the subtropical jet, which can create multiple chances for winter storms this year, which I do think can happen. So a QB in the east-based phase does support colder risks as we head into parts of winter. So what's the polar vortex? Again, it's a low pressure system low pressure systems that are up into the North Pole. What happens is you get these high pressures that kind of push on the polar vortex. It can weaken it, disturb it, and this can force the cold air south. It has been getting disturbed, and it could bring an Arctic blast like 2013, 2014 winter in January. We had that Arctic blast for 10 to 15 days, especially across the eastern United States. There is a sudden stratosphere warming event right now, which means it's getting kind of disturbed, getting warmed, and then what can this do? This is forces the cold air south, and it's not just cold air; it's it's Arctic cold air, which means that we can get into the negative degrees sometimes if we get that Arctic AO or if we get that polar vortex come down, which I do think it can happen, but we'll have to see how this year evolves. I do think the best time for the Arctic or for the polar vortex to come down would probably be in January, but again, we'll have to find out and see what happens with that. So this is an example of the polar vortex does. It basically, and when it gets disturbed, it comes down from Canada and it goes into, this is probably what's going to happen this year. It's going to go down into the Ohio Valley and push off to the east and the northeast, which I think the cold conditions will be up there. But again, we'll just see how this evolves, because it can certainly push back to the west, and we can see very cold conditions in the central United States as well. So I also want to talk about the solar minimum. We're in a solar minimum right now, probably the lowest solar we've been in a long time. There has been no sunspot reported on the sun right now that's going towards the Earth, which means this. So basically, solar minimums enhance the blocking. Research has told us that it enhanced the blocking, and it also helps with the colder risk, which makes the cold shots even colder, which is why this is why when we had that big Arctic outbreak in 2013, 2014, it could even be colder because of the solar minimum we have right now. So again, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And so like I said, there's been correlations that support that this leads to more high latitude blocking, but that's still up in the air. I have seen that this has made the cold shots colder, especially what happened in October, November this year. So if we do get an Arctic blast, expect them to be colder than normal. Again, we'll have to see what happens. But 2013-14 was very cold. It could be colder than that, depending on how severe the cold is and how much snow we have on the ground. But with storm minimum, it supports a more colder shot than we usually have. So next, I'm going to show you the seasonal models and what they're trying to suggest, and then I'm going to show the analogs. We're going to use the Jamstack model, the UK Met, the Euro, and then the multi-model ensemble probability model, probability. This basically shows like all the models combined and see what they're showing. First of all, the Jamstack has warm temperatures in the west and cold temperatures in the central and eastern United States, which should again support the potential for a negative EPO and positive PNA pattern. But again, this is just showing the entire winter. So what it's showing, I kind of agree with it. It has colder conditions in the eastern United States. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then this is the UK Met, and it's also trying to show a negative EPO pattern. But what it's trying to show is a negative PNA pattern. So this has cold air in the western central United States with the warmer air building in the east. This is supported southeast ridge. So again, there's also these kind of risks that go into the forecast that there also could be a negative PNA for most of the year. Well, again, we'll have to keep watching on that. The European has basically the same pattern that the Jamstack did. Has a positive PNA in the west, and it has colder conditions in the east. So there's another model that shows it, and then the multi-model probability forecast. It has colder conditions in the central United States with a positive PNA in the north and a negative EPO in Alaska. And again, this forces the colder air south into the central and eastern United States. So this is my December analog for this year. What I'm doing is I'm using recent years. There's years I could really get from probably like 1980 was an analog year. But I don't want to use those like all those years in the past because there's kind of different climate now. Again, temperatures have been slightly warmer than usual across the world. So I'm using the more recent years that I think that will look very similar to this year. So the first year for me is December of 2009, 2013, 2018. This supports cold in the central and western United States with the southeast ridge building. The beginning of December looks cold with a polar vortex potential that could come down to the United States. But after that, I do think the cold retreats to the west, and we get a very active pattern across the central and western United States. We get multiple troughs to dig across there. The January analog I have is, again, the same years, 2010, 2014, and 2019. Basically, these are the same back pattern we've seen in the models with a positive PNA pattern in the west. And we also have the cold conditions going to the east. I do think January is our coldest month, and this has the highest potential to have a polar vortex to come down. Also has higher potential to be the coldest month of the year. I do think this is going to be I don't think it's going to be a very active month for snow lovers, but I do think it's going to be a very cold month. There could be some light snow events here and there, but I do think that this is going to be a very cold, dominant month that looks mostly dry across the United States. February, as you can see, the cold retreats back to the west. As you can see in the last I did, the cold conditions go back to the central United States with a little bit of a southeast ridge building and to the southeast. I do think February looks like it could be the most active months that we're going to have this year. We're dealing with winter precipitation. So tropical jet looks like it's going to be more pumped. Looking like it's going to be more active in February because the cold air is going to be returning back to the north, and we're going to have that nice classic temperature gradient across an area. Which that's this far out. We don't know where it's going to be, but I do think that February is going to be a very active month with also cold temperatures remaining in the central United States. So with all that said, here is my temperature forecast for the United States in December. I do think it's warmer in the southwest, and I do think it's colder in the central United States with a little southeast ridge developing in the east. This also, depending on what the troughs do, this could shift more. The cold air could shift more east with time, but I do think we're going to get a cold shot at the beginning of December, and then we're going to have the cold retreat back to the west in the end of December. And I do think there's an active period for storm systems across the central United States, beginning probably around the 20th of December, heading into New Year's. Well, I'll discuss why I think that in a little bit, but that's when I think the most active period for December is going to be. Next is going to be the January outlook. This is when I think the polar vortex and the PNA pattern is basically going to get really ramped up. I think a big time ridge develops here in the western United States with a very strong eastern trough in the east United States, with potentially polar vortex coming down. I do think the coldest temperatures is in the Ohio Valley and out to the east. That's where I think the polar vortex is going to come down. Again, January has the potential to be the coldest month, not the most active month, but the coldest month. We could have some light snow in there, but again, January looks like to be the less active month, which is colder, with very cold temperatures penetrating the United States. And the February outlook, I have the cold still packed up in the northern United States, with slightly cooler conditions across the central and south central United States, with again the southwest ridge that looks to develop again in February. Southwest ridge could be pulled back a little bit more, as we've had in November. We had a slightly a very high altitude pattern, especially across the western United States. But we had a couple of troughs penetrate the west coast, so this ridge could be pushed more down to the southwest. We'll see how that goes. But I do think the cooler temperatures is in the northern plains and the central plains, in the Kansas, Nebraska, and areas to the north. I think the east is about average. I think you're going to have your cold shots. I also think you're going to have your warm shots. But I do think this is going to be a very active month. It's a very active subtropical job this year. So I do think February has potential to produce a lot of winter storms, a lot of major winter storms. I think probably 2 to 4 winter storms is in the forecast for February, just because of how active that has been in the past. We'll have to keep an eye on that, but I do think February is going to be the most active month for snow lovers. So yeah. So the snowfall forecast, I do think the most active areas this year are going to be across the Ohio Valley into the northeast. This area could shift south, but I don't think it's going to shift any more west, because it seems like this year the storm system likes to develop in the central United States and push off to the east. As last year, storm systems developed basically in the southwest. This year it's going to be opposite. I think storm systems are going to develop in the central United States and then eject out into the Ohio Valley. This is why I think the areas in Illinois and Indiana are going to have a big time jackpot for snow this year. And again, areas like Boston, we'll just see what happens because of the warm temperatures in the east right now. In the eastern, by the Atlantic Ocean, there's some warm waters. We'll see how that goes. I do think that can probably get a little bit down a little bit, but this area could shift east. But I do think the most active areas for snow are going to be in the Ohio Valley and onto the northeast. So why I've been talking about like a recycling, or a pattern that cycles throughout the year. So the pattern recycles throughout the entire year. We get a new pattern as we head into October. This is the LRC. Give a big shout out to Gary Lazak for this one. He created the LRC, and it makes sense. The pattern does recycle. Cycle has there's a couple of cycles to go through. The pattern does repeat, so that's why I do think that, this late December can be very active because of what happened in October. We had a couple of western troughs digging in. We had a blizzard that one October 8th. We had another system that was a warmer system. Then we had a system around October 31st, which produced a widespread couple inches of snow in the central United States, which is why I do think that the late December can be very active. And basically, like I said, what happens is you get your pattern set up in October, and it cycles and goes throughout the year and everything like that. So again, give us a shout out to Gary Lazak. He has basically the idea for this, but it does make sense, and that's why I do think there's going to be a couple of big time winter storms in February, just because of the active pattern has been in October. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you guys are ready for a cold winter. I am. It doesn't look like it's going to be as active as last year, but again, it's still going to be pretty active for this winter compared to other winters. So hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great rest of your week, and hope you enjoy this winter.